Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
The arena stank of wet iron and fear. 30,000 voices merged into a single beast. Roaring, hungry, insatiable. The crowd packed the stone tiers, each level a different shade of privilege. Nobles beneath silk canopies, their cobalt skin gleaming. Merchants and craftsmen pressed shoulder to shoulder. At the bottom, slaves stood in chains. Caleb Riley stood among them. Human, pink-skinned, alien. Rain turned the arena floor to red clay slurry. It smelled like copper and something chemical the Karali used to preserve their dead. Around him, children played in the mud. Karali children in white masks, symbols of purity. They had a game. Throw a carved bird into the air. Whoever caught it would be freed from imaginary chains. The smallest girl, Princess Kira's sister, clutched her wooden bird against her chest. Her nurse had carved it. The toy was famous in the slave quarters. Any mistake here is death, Caleb thought. Don't look. Don't speak. Don't exist. The girl stumbled. Her hands opened. The wooden bird fell through the rain and dust, a delicate toy spinning above the roar of the crowd. Caleb Riley caught it just before it hit the mud of the arena floor. His fingers closed around the carved wings, still warm from a child's grip. The girl stood 10 meters away, pressed against the leg of a royal guard, her eyes wide and terrified. She couldn't have been more than 6. Her skin was the same deep cobalt blue as every citizen of Corrales. Every citizen except the slaves. Caleb looked at the toy. Someone had carved it carefully, whittled each feather with precision. The wood was pale, almost white. He turned toward the girl, arm extended. Here! A gloved hand ripped it from his palm. Kira stood above him. Her blue skin caught the gray light like polished stone. Rain beaded on her shoulders, on the ceremonial armor that marked her as royalty. Her eyes were black pits, cold and bottomless. She'd been taught since childhood. Never show mercy to the lesser. Weakness invites chaos. The hierarchy is sacred. Her first tutor, a woman with scars like canyons across her face, had made her watch executions from age 7. This is compassion, the woman had said, forcing Kira's eyes open as a slave was burned alive. We give them purpose, structure. Without us, they are animals. Her brother had believed it, lived it, died defending it. Her father's last words echoed in her skull. The moment you hesitate, they smell blood. Never hesitate. She didn't want to do this. The thought surfaced before she could stop it. Treasonous, weak, dangerous. She crushed it immediately. Slaves do not touch the blood of champions. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The crowd of 30,000 went silent. Below the stone tiers, ventilation pumps vibrated through the foundation. The arena seemed to breathe with the crowd. Inhale, exhale, a mechanical heartbeat synchronized with 30,000 lungs. When the little girl began to cry, the noise dropped for just a moment. Thousands held their breath. Even the whipmaster paused, coil trembling in his hand. Behind her, the arbiter, old magistrate Kelras, cleared his throat. A subtle prompt, a reminder. You must enforce this. They're watching. Show strength. He leaned close, his voice a whisper, meant only for her. The nobles expect blood, princess. Your house cannot afford to appear soft, not after your brother's death. The words were chains, invisible, unbreakable. Caleb didn't move, didn't lower his eyes. He'd learned that in the war, before the transport went down, before the slavers found the wreckage, before everything turned to ash and chains. You don't show fear to predators. Kira's jaw tightened. She threw the wooden bird at the feet of the nearest guard. A brute named Kelvor, twice Caleb's width, face scarred like melted wax. Destroy it. Kelvor's boot came down. The toy shattered. Splinters scattered across the mud. The little girl made a sound, a choked whimper. Kira didn't look at her. She looked at Caleb. Her voice came out harder than she intended, desperate to drown the doubt clawing at her throat. 50 lashes. Public. Now. Murmurs rippled through the stands. 50 was a death sentence for most. Caleb had seen men die at 30. 2 guards grabbed his arms. He didn't resist. They dragged him to the flogging post. a weathered pillar of black stone in the center of the arena, stained with old blood that the rain never fully washed away. They stripped his shirt, shackled his wrists to the iron rings. The metal was cold against his skin, slick with moisture. The whip master approached, a lean man with empty eyes and a coil of braided synthetic leather in his hands. The whip hissed as he let it unfurl. Caleb pressed his forehead against the stone. His breath came shallow. He could hear the crowd, some cheering, some silent, some placing bets on whether he'd survive. The first strike tore across his shoulders. White fire. His vision blurred. He bit down hard, tasted copper. The second lash crossed the first. His back opened like split fruit. He made no sound. Kira's breath caught. Her hands gripped the railing. Scream. Please. Give me a reason to stop this. Third, fourth, fifth. The silence was worse than screaming, worse than pleading. It stripped something away from her, layer by layer, exposing nerves she didn't know she had. Why won't he break? The question burrowed into her chest like a parasite. Sixth, seventh. Her vision tunneled. The crowd's roar became static. All she could see was his back, flayed open, rivers of red, and his hands still clenched against the stone, knuckles white. He's just a slave, just property. This means nothing. But her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape her body. Her pupils dilated, contracted, dilated again. A bead of sweat rolled down her temple despite the cold rain. Eighth, ninth. Stop counting. Stop watching. Look away. She couldn't. The pain that rolled across his shoulders with each strike. She felt it. Phantom agony crawling up her spine. Impossible. Insane. But real. 10th lash. The pain became something else for Caleb. A roaring static. A void that tried to pull him under. He focused on his breathing. In. Out. Count them. Stay conscious. He lifted his head. Through the rain and blood, he found her. Kira stood on the royal platform, arms crossed, face carved from ice. But something was wrong. Her pupils dilated, contracted. Her heartbeat hammered against her ribs. She could hear it in her own skull, louder than the crowd. Why isn't he screaming? Why won't he break? The question crawled beneath her skin like poison. She wanted to look away, couldn't. Her body betrayed her. Pulse racing, breath shallow, a tremor starting in her hands that she couldn't control. This is wrong. No. She crushed the thought, buried it. This was justice. This was order. He looked at her, not pleading, not begging, a promise. Her expression didn't change, but her hands tightened on her forearms, hard enough to bruise, hard enough to hurt. Something flickered behind her eyes, something that felt like drowning. 20th lash. His knees buckled. The shackles held him upright. 30th. The crowd was quieter now. Even the bloodthirsty ones sensed something wrong. He should be screaming. Should be broken. 40th. His vision tunneled. The world reduced to gray sky. Black stone. The rhythm of the whip. 45th. He saw the little girl, still watching, still pressed against the guard's leg, her face streaked with tears. 50th. The whip fell away. Silence. They released the shackles. Caleb collapsed forward, hands hitting mud. Blood ran down his spine in hot rivers, mixing with rainwater, pooling beneath him. Something moved in his peripheral vision, a shard of the wooden bird, half buried in the muck. He reached for it, fingers shaking, barely responding, and closed his fist around it. The guards hauled him to his feet. His legs gave out. They dragged him toward the slave gate, boots carving furrows through the arena floor. As they pulled him past the royal platform, Caleb looked up one last time. Kira was still watching, but now her arms were uncrossed. Her hands gripped the railing, knuckles pale against blue skin. The arena roared, but she couldn't unsee his eyes. Not the gaze of a broken man, a silent oath carved in blood. Fire, radio static, a child's voice screaming through the smoke. Sector 7, we need evac. The transport splitting open, metal screaming, his hands reaching through flames toward, don't leave me, Please don't. Nothing. Just ash and the smell of burning. 3 days. Caleb spent them in the medical ward, a concrete bunker beneath the arena where slaves were patched up enough to work again. No painkillers, just antiseptic gel that burned like acid and synthetic bandages that stuck to raw flesh. He lay on his stomach on a metal cot, alone. The other slaves gave him distance. They always did. He was human. They were Corelli. Even here at the bottom there was hierarchy. On the 4th day, a guard came. Get up. You're assigned to the beast pens. Caleb pushed himself upright. His back screamed. Fresh blood seeped through the bandages. I don't work with animals. The guard, a younger one, nervous, shook his head. Orders came from the palace. You start tonight. The beast pens sat at the edge of the arena complex, carved into the cliffside. Massive reinforced cages built to hold the war beasts that Corelli used in their ritual hunts and gladiatorial games. Most were empty now. The breeding programs had collapsed after the war with the northern clans. Only one pen still held an occupant. Caleb walked the corridor between cages, his supervisor's footsteps fading behind him. The moment he was alone, the beast stirred. A low rumble started from the left cage, then another from the right. Soon the entire corridor hummed with animal voices. Not roaring, but something deeper. Resonant, like pipes in an ancient cathedral. Some beat their tails against reinforced bars, rhythmic, deliberate. Others scraped claws against stone walls. The sound echoed, multiplied, became a living thing. In the darkness, eyes gleamed. Dozens of them. Not the flat, predatory stare of animals, but something else. Something that watched, recognized. Caleb's back still burned from the flogging. Each step sent fresh pain through torn muscle, but he kept walking. As he passed one cage, a voice, low, rasping, barely more than breath, whispered from the shadows. Sing, human? We hear. Caleb stopped, looked into the darkness. 2 golden eyes blinked slowly. He didn't know if he'd imagined it, but his skin prickled. He kept walking until he reached the final pen. The red hide. Caleb saw it from 30 meters away. A creature the size of a troop transport, covered in overlapping plates of crimson armor hide. 6 legs thick as tree trunks. A head like a battering ram, scarred and ancient. Its breath came in wet, labored gasps. The smell hit him first. Animal musk mixed with infection. The sweet rot of untended wounds. Beneath that, something else. Grief. He'd smelled it before, on dying soldiers who'd lost everyone. The beast breathing rattled like broken machinery. Each exhale sent clouds of condensation into the cold air, tinged with the copper scent of internal bleeding. Its sides heaved irregularly, pain with every breath. It had belonged to Kira's brother, the champion who died in the arena 6 months ago, killed by a rival house in single combat. The beast was dying. It wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. It threw itself against the bars until blood streamed from its flanks, until the reinforced steel bent and screamed. The impact of its body hitting the cage sounded like artillery fire. Each collision left dents in metal designed to withstand plasma charges. The handlers said it was mourning, said it would be dead within a week. Some whispered it was waiting, that it knew its master's killer still walked free, and it refused to die before vengeance was served. The bars of its cage were scored with deep gouges, some nearly penetrating through. Dried blood caked the steel in layers, old and new. The floor was littered with shattered bone. The creature had destroyed every piece of food brought to it, crushed meat and marrow into paste rather than eat. Caleb's supervisor, an older Corelli named Torvin with gray patches modeling his blue skin, handed him a bucket of scraps. Try to feed it. Probably won't work. Just do what you can. Why me? Torvin shrugged. Someone upstairs thinks you're expendable. He left. Caleb stood alone, bucket in hand, staring at the beast. It was curled in the far corner of the pen, head lowered, breathing in ragged gas. Even dying, it radiated menace. He set the bucket down, walked to the gate. The lock was biometric, Corelli only. He couldn't open it even if he wanted to. Not going in, he muttered. Not insane. He turned to leave. A sound stopped him. Low, Guttural. Not a growl. Something else. Pain. He looked back. The red hide had lifted its head, its eyes, black and deep as oil wells, fixed on him. They held the same emptiness Caleb had seen in the mirror after the transport crash, after watching his squad burn. He exhaled slowly. Yeah, I know. He sat down on the stone floor, back against the wall opposite the cage. His bandages pulled. He ignored it, and he started to sing. Quiet, almost a whisper, an old song, from Earth, from a war that ended before he was born, but the melody survived, passed from soldier to soldier like a ghost. When the iron sleeps, men return. When the battle fades, the names still burn. Carry the fallen, remember the lost. Every step forward, every cost. The red hide's head snapped up. Its black eyes locked onto him. For a moment, nothing. Then its breathing changed. The ragged gasps smoothed. The rattling wheeze quieted. The beast's massive body shuddered, not in rage, in recognition. Caleb kept singing, verse after verse. His voice cracked on the high notes. He didn't stop. The red hide went completely still. Its ears, small, nearly invisible beneath its armor plating, swiveled toward him. Its nostrils flared, scenting the air. Then slowly, it lowered its enormous head. Not in submission, in listening. Kira stood in the shadows beyond the torchlight, watching. She'd come to check on the beast. It had been her brother's companion since childhood, raised together, trained together, bonded in ways the Korali considered sacred. She'd promised herself she'd be there when it died. Promised she'd give it that much. She hadn't expected to find a slave sitting outside its cage. Hadn't expected the singing. The melody hit her like a blade between the ribs. No. Her breath stopped. Her hand reached for the wall to steady herself. That's impossible. She knew this song. Her brother used to hum it. Before battles, before hunts, before everything. He'd never told her where he learned it. Said it was a secret, a soldier's prayer from a war she couldn't understand. But here it was, coming from the mouth of the man she'd ordered flogged. He poisons everything. Even this. Even. But the red hide wasn't attacking, wasn't roaring. It was listening. Kira's throat constricted. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The beast lowered its head further, its eyes closed, and for the first time in 6 months, it looked peaceful. Minutes passed, an hour. Finally, the creature moved. It dragged itself forward, armor scraping against stone, until it reached the bars. Each movement was deliberate, careful, like approaching something sacred. It pressed its scarred snout between them, close enough that Caleb could feel its breath. Hot, smelling of copper and rot and something else. Something alive. He stopped singing, reached out. His hand met armored hide, warm, rough, trembling. They hurt you too, he said quietly. The red hide's eyes closed. A sound came from deep in its chest. Not a growl, not a purr. Something between a whimper and a sigh. The sound of a creature that had forgotten what gentleness felt like. Caleb's fingers found the wounds along its snout. Fresh ones, where it had scraped itself raw against the bars. He touched them carefully, mapping the damage. The beast leaned into his hand. Its breathing steadied further, deeper, almost normal. Then something extraordinary happened. The red hide began to hum, low, subsonic, a vibration more than a sound. But the pitch matched Caleb's song, note for note. Kira's knees gave out. She caught herself against the wall, hand pressed over her mouth to keep from making a sound. The guards beside her stared through the bars, frozen. One whispered, "Impossible." The beast, the creature that had tried to kill 3 handlers yesterday, that had shattered a man's ribs 2 days before that, lowered its head beside the slave, pressed against him like a child seeking comfort. Caleb reached through the bars. His movements were careful, deliberate. He touched the beast's wounds, the places where it had torn itself open against the cage, cleaned them with water from a bucket. His hands, scarred, human, gentle, moved across armor that could deflect blades. He spoke too quietly for Kira to hear, but the beast responded, shifted closer. Let him work. The red hide's tail, thick as a tree trunk, studded with bone spikes, wrapped partially around Caleb's legs, not restraining, protecting. Kira felt something hot on her cheeks. She touched her face. Her fingers came away wet. I'm crying. The realization hit like a physical blow. She hadn't cried since her brother's funeral, hadn't allowed herself. Tears were weakness. Tears were... She turned and walked away, quickly, before the guards could see, before anyone could witness the cracks spreading through her armor. But she heard it behind her, the low, contented rumble of the red hide, the sound it used to make when her brother stroked its head after battles, the sound of something broken finally beginning to heal, and she understood, with terrible clarity, that she'd been wrong about everything. The next morning, Caleb was assigned permanently to the beast pens. No explanation, just new orders. He spent his days cleaning cages, hauling feed, repairing damaged bars. At night, he sat with the red hide. Sometimes he sang, sometimes he just sat in silence. The beast began to eat, slowly at first, then with hunger. Within a week, it stopped bleeding itself. Within 2, it responded to commands. The handlers watched in disbelief. Torvin pulled Caleb aside one evening. What did you do? Nothing. Don't lie to me, human. Caleb met his eyes. I didn't do anything. I just didn't treat it like a monster. Torvin studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Be careful. People notice when slaves perform miracles. Kira noticed. She came to the pens late at night when the handlers were gone. She watched from the upper walkway as Caleb worked below, washing the red hide's armor, checking its teeth, speaking to it in low tones. He moved like a soldier, efficient, focused, but his hands were gentle. She hated him, hated that he was good at this, hated that the beast trusted him, hated that every time she saw him, she thought about his eyes in the arena, the promise in them, the thing she couldn't name. One night he looked up and saw her. They stared at each other across the space. 30 meters, an unbridgeable gulf. He didn't bow, didn't look away, just nodded once. She turned and left. Her hands were shaking. The ritual hunt was announced 3 weeks later, an ancient tradition. The noble houses would take their war beasts into the southern forests and hunt the great predators that lived there. Proof of strength, proof of dominance. Kira would lead her house's contingent. The red hide would accompany her. Lord Vorlag, her brother's killer, sent word that he would attend as well. A show of unity, he called it. Kira knew better. She went to the slave quarters the night before the hunt, found Caleb in his bunk, reading an old data pad someone had smuggled in. He looked up. Surprise flickered across his face. Princess. She ignored the title. The hunt tomorrow. The red hide goes with me. I know. Will it obey? Caleb set down the data pad. Slowly he stood. His back was still scarred, the marks visible through his thin shirt. It'll obey you, if you don't treat it like a weapon. It is a weapon. It was your brother's friend. The words hit like a punch. Kira's jaw clenched. You didn't know him. No, but I know what it's like to lose people. His voice was quiet. And I know what it's like when the only thing left is something that remembers them. Silence. Kira's hands curled into fists. She wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted him to stop being right. Instead, she said, if the beast fails tomorrow, I'll have you killed. Caleb nodded. Understood. She left, but she didn't sleep that night. The southern forests were ancient, black-barked, the canopy so dense that midday felt like dusk. The hunting party moved in formation, 20 warriors, 10 beasts, Kira at the front on the red hide's back. But the formation was wrong. Warriors rode in clusters by house, Iron Blood, Stone River, Vorlag's Crimson Fang. The spaces between groups stretched too wide. Hands rested on weapons. The forest swallowed sound. No birds, no insects, just wet drips from leaves and things moving in the underbrush. Lord Vorlag rode parallel to Kira on a sleek predator cat, armor polished to a mirror sheen. He smiled too much. A fine day for blood, princess. Kira didn't answer. She watched the tree line, counted steps between her escorts and Vorlag's men. Behind her, one of her guards, young Thesic, kept glancing at Vorlag's contingent. His hand hadn't left his blade in 20 minutes. They moved deeper. The Redhide's breathing changed. Short, alert. It smelled blood before the hunt began. Caleb walked behind, chained to 3 other slaves. Officially, carriers. Unofficially, bait. Ahead, something screamed, high and sharp and cut off mid-cry. Her escort, 5 of her most trusted guards, flanked her. Or so she thought. The attack came without warning. One moment, they were riding through a clearing. The next, her guards turned on her. Spears swung inward. The Redhide roared and reared. Kira was thrown from its back, hit the ground hard, rolled. She came up with her blade drawn, 5 against 1. The illusion of command shattered like glass. Vorlag's doing. Had to be. He'd bought them. Promised them something worth more than loyalty. Nothing personal, princess, one of them said. A woman named Sarath. Just politics. They advanced. Kira backed toward the trees. Her mind raced. She was good, trained since childhood, but 5 seasoned warriors. A shadow burst from the undergrowth. Caleb. He wasn't armed, wasn't armored, just torn clothes and desperation. He threw himself between Kira and the nearest spear. The iron point drove through his shoulder and pinned him to the ground. He didn't scream. His hand went to his tunic, pulled something out, pressed it into Kira's palm. She looked down. A wooden bird, carved perfectly, every feather detailed. Her eyes widened. Go, Caleb gasped. Thessic yanked the spear free, raised it for a killing blow. Kira's hand closed around the wooden bird. Something inside her snapped. She moved, seized the spear mid-thrust. Her glove tore, leather ripping, palm slicing open against the shaft. Didn't matter. She twisted, hard, felt bone break. Thessic's wrist shattered with a wet crack, tendons snapping like overstressed cables. She drove the point up through his throat. The spear punched through soft tissue, shattered vertebrae, erupted from the base of his skull. Blood sprayed across her face, hot and copper-tasting. He was still falling when she ripped the blade free and turned. Sarath lunged. Kira ducked under the strike, felt the blade pass centimeters from her scalp. Came up inside her guard. Her sword found the gap between chest plate and shoulder guard. Drove through ribs, scraped bone, punctured lung. Sarath's eyes went wide, tried to speak. Blood bubbled from her mouth instead. Kira yanked the blade free, kicked her back. Drex hesitated. Fatal mistake. The Redhide hit him like a landslide. 6 tons of armored fury moving at full charge. Armor crumpled like parchment. Bones shattered. The beast's jaws closed around his torso and shook. A dog with a rat. When it dropped him, he was barely recognizable as humanoid. Morna and Kelvin broke, ran. The Redhide roared, not the cry of an animal, but something primal, something that recognized Kira's rage and reflected it back, amplified it until the trees themselves seemed to shake. Kira let them go, let them run, let them carry the story back. She dropped to her knees beside Caleb, her hands covered in blood, her own and theirs, shook as she touched his shoulder. The spear wound was deep, bone deep. Blood poured from it, soaking the ground, mixing with rain and mud. Why? Her voice cracked. Why did you? You're not like them. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, shock setting in. You're just scared and angry and, he coughed, red bubbles, trapped. Shut up, stop talking. She tore fabric from her cloak, pressed it against the wound. Her torn glove was useless now. She ripped it off with her teeth, threw it aside. Her bare hand pressed against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Too fast, too weak. The bird, Caleb whispered, blood at the corner of his mouth. For your sister, to replace... Kira looked at the carving in her palm. Perfect, beautiful, every feather detailed just like the original. How many hours had he spent? How many nights? The same mud that soaked into his back now had once soaked through her brother's funeral shroud. And the song, that damned song, still echoed somewhere in her chest, in the Redhide's rumbling breaths, in the rain falling through the canopy. And the song of the dying beast still echoed somewhere in her chest. She rose, pulled Caleb up with her. He groaned but stayed conscious. Can you ride? Not well. Good enough. She got him onto the red hide's back, climbed up behind him, her arm wrapped around his chest to hold him steady. Where's Vorlag? He asked. Fled. Probably halfway to his territory by now. Then what? Then I'm going to kill him. Her voice was cold, final. Ancient law, blood feud. If he murdered my brother, I can challenge him to single combat. You'll need a champion. I know. They rode in silence. Caleb's head lolled back against her shoulder. He was fading. She could feel it. Stay awake, she ordered. Trying. That's an order. A weak laugh. Yes, princess. The forest blurred past. The red hide moved like liquid death, tireless, furious. By the time they reached the medical ward, Caleb was unconscious. Kira carried him inside herself. The day of judgment came too fast. 7 days after the hunt. 7 days of lawyers and arbiters and endless protocol. Lord Vorlag denied everything. Called Kira a liar. Said her guards had acted alone. But the law was clear. Blood feud could only be resolved one way. Single combat between champions. The problem, Kira's champion was dead. And by ancient law, if she had no champion, she had two choices. Withdraw her claim or marry her accuser to unify the houses. The arena filled. Rain poured from a sky the color of bruises. 30,000 spectators watched in silence. Kira stood in the center of the fighting ground, rain streaming down her face. The arbiter, an ancient Kirali with ritual scars covering his arms, raised his hand. The House of Iron Blood stands accused of false claim. Without a champion to defend her honor, Princess Kira must... I have a champion. The words left her mouth before she'd fully decided to speak them. The arbiter paused. Who? Kira looked toward the slave gate. It was locked, barred from the inside. Silence stretched. Vorlag laughed from his platform. You have nothing, girl. Concede or marry me. Those are your options. Kira's hands curled into fists. Then she heard it. The creak of chains. The slave gate opened. Caleb stepped into the light. His shoulder was bandaged, his steps unsteady, but his eyes were clear. The beast pens behind the walls erupted. The red hide's howl split the air. A sound like thunder and grief and defiance all at once. Vorlag's smile vanished. Him? He's a slave. A human. Caleb walked forward, slowly, every step deliberate. I was, he said quietly. The crowd murmured, shock rippling through the stands. Kira's heart hammered. She'd expected him to refuse, expected sanity to prevail. Instead, he walked past the arbiter, past Vorlag's sneering champion, a mountain of muscle and scars named Drask. He walked to the sacred pedestal at the arena's heart. On it sat the armor of Kira's fallen brother, polished, waiting, untouched since his death. Vorlag's voice rose to a roar. You dare wear what you disgraced? He died because of your kind, because humans brought war to our world. Caleb ignored him. His fingers brushed the breastplate, the helmet. He looked at Kira. She understood. This was the moment, the point of no return. She could stop him, order him back, find another way, or she could let him burn for her. Kira took one step forward, then another. The crowd went silent. She reached out and placed her hand on his wounded shoulder. Gasps rippled through the stands. The touch. In Kirali culture, it was a vow, a binding oath witnessed by every god and ancestor. The arbiter's voice shook. The blood has recognized the touch. The slave is claimed as champion. The roar that followed shook the arena walls. Caleb lifted the helmet. For a moment, just a heartbeat, Kira saw her brother's reflection in the polished steel. But the eyes staring back were human, different, and somehow impossibly right. He set the helmet on his head. Vorlag's champion stepped forward. Drask stood 2 meters tall, arms thick as support beams. He carried a warhammer that had killed 16 men. Caleb had a sword he barely knew how to use, and a shoulder held together with synthetic thread. The arbiter raised his hand. First blood ends the bout. Death ends the feud. Begin. Drask charged. The ground shook. The hammer came down like a meteor. Caleb dove left. The weapon hit stone, cracked it, sent shards flying. He rolled to his feet. His shoulder screamed. He ignored it. Drask swung again. Horizontal. Caleb ducked under. Barely. Felt the wind of the blow against his back. "Stand still," Drask roared. Caleb circled. His mind raced. He couldn't match strength. Couldn't match speed. Couldn't win by any traditional measure. But he'd been a soldier, and soldiers didn't fight fair. Drask lunged. Caleb feinted right, went left. Drask corrected too fast. Caught him anyway. Backhanded him across the face. Caleb hit the ground. Tasted blood. Vision blurred. The crowd screamed. Kira watched from the sidelines, hands gripping the railing until her knuckles went white. Caleb pushed himself up. His jaw was probably broken. Didn't matter. Drask advanced. Casual now. Confident. "You've got courage, human. I'll give you that. But courage doesn't win fights." Caleb spat blood. "No, but desperation does." He moved, not away, toward. Drask swung. Caleb dropped under the blow, slid between the giant's legs, came up behind him. He drove his sword into the gap where armor plates met at the back of the knee. Drask howled, spun, backhanded Caleb again, sent him sprawling. But Drask was limping now. They circled each other, both bleeding, both exhausted. The rain intensified. The arena floor turned to red mud. Drask charged again, reckless now, angry. Caleb waited. At the last second, he sidestepped. Drask's hammer hit the pedestal, the sacred pedestal. The crowd gasped. Sacrilege. Drask froze, realizing his mistake. Caleb drove his sword through the gap in the armor at Drask's neck. First blood. The arbiter's voice rang out. "The bout is ended. The champion of Iron Blood stands victorious." Silence, then the roar. Kira ran across the arena floor, caught Caleb as he collapsed. "You insane, reckless!" "Did I win?" "Yes." "Good." His eyes fluttered closed. "Worth it." The crowd exploded. Kira ran across the arena floor. Her boots slipped in mud. She caught Caleb as he collapsed. "You insane, reckless." "Did I win?" "Yes." "Good." His eyes fluttered closed. "Worth it." The medical ward. Again. Caleb woke to find Kira sitting beside his cot. She looked exhausted. Her armor was gone. Just simple clothes, her blue skin muted in the dim light. "How long?" he asked. 2 days. "Vorlag." "Exiled. His house stripped of titles. The arbiter ruled in our favor." She paused. "Because of you." Caleb tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his shoulder. He gave up. "What happens now?" Kira was quiet for a long time. "By law, you're still a slave, but you wore the armor. You won as champion. The precedent is complicated. So I'm a slave with complicated legal status. Essentially." He laughed. It hurt. Kira's expression softened. "I could free you. Officially. You've earned it. And then what? I wander off into the sunset? If you want." Caleb looked at her. Really looked. The exhaustion in her eyes. The weight she carried. "I don't want that." "What do you want?" The question hung between them. "I want..." He exhaled slowly. "I want to stop running. I've been running since the transport crashed. Since I lost my unit. I'm tired. So stay." "As what?" Kira reached out. Her hand hovered over his. Then slowly she took it. Silence. Just their breathing in the small room. 3 heartbeats. 4. "You're mine," she said quietly. "And I'm yours." Her skin was warm. He'd expected it to be cold. "The touch," he said quietly. "In the arena." "What did that mean?" "Really?" "It means you're mine, and I'm yours." Her voice was steady. "In our culture, it's binding. Forever." "Sounds serious." "It is. You could have chosen anyone. I chose you." "Why?" She was quiet. Then, "Because you saw me. Not the princess. Not the armor. You saw the person underneath, and you didn't look away." Caleb's throat tightened. Outside, the Red Hide's roar echoed across the arena complex. A sound of victory, of recognition. Kira smiled slightly. "It's celebrating. It knows. Everything knows." She stood, leaned down, pressed her forehead against his, a gesture he didn't understand but felt in his bones. Rest. When you're healed, we have work to do. What kind of work? The kind that changes things. Her eyes were bright, fierce. You proved a slave can be a champion. That means every law, every assumption, every hierarchy, it's all vulnerable now. You want a revolution. I want justice. There's a difference. Caleb smiled despite the pain. Justice sounds good. She left him there, but her hand had been warm, and for the first time since the transport crash, Caleb felt something other than emptiness. Hope. The armor didn't fit. Caleb stood in the empty training yard behind the palace, wearing the champion's breastplate. It was designed for Karali physiology. Broader shoulders, denser bone structure. The weight crushed down on his injured shoulder. Each breath was a fight. Kira stood 10 meters away, arms crossed, silent, watching. Pick up the sword. Caleb reached down. His fingers closed around the hilt. He pulled. The blade barely lifted. Too heavy. Designed for warriors twice his mass. He got it halfway up before his shoulder gave out. The sword crashed back to the ground. He gasped, vision whiting out from pain. Again! He tried. Failed. His knees hit the dirt. Again! This time he got the blade vertical. Held it for 3 heartbeats. 4. His arms shook. The sword fell. He stayed on his knees, breathing hard. Blood seeped through his bandages. Kira walked closer, stopped just in front of him. A champion doesn't hold the sword, she said quietly. He holds the eyes of those who watch. Caleb looked up, met her gaze. Black eyes, deep as oceans, filled with something he couldn't name. Hope, fear, desperation, faith. He didn't look away. Seconds stretched. His shoulder screamed. His ribs ached. But he held her stare. Finally, she nodded. That's enough for today. But they both knew it wasn't about the sword anymore. 3 months later, the arena filled again. 30,000 bodies. But this time the chains were different. Looser, some removed entirely. The ceremony was unprecedented, historic. The Continental Council had argued for weeks before agreeing to witness it. Kira stood at the center of the fighting ground, dressed in formal armor, her house's colors shining despite the gray light. Beside her, Caleb wore the champion's armor. It had been adjusted to fit him, modified, made his. The arbiter, still Magistrate Kelras, but older now, grayer, raised his voice. By ancient law and new precedent, we recognize the binding of champion and blood. What was slave is now equal. What was property is now partner. The crowd was divided. Some cheered, the slaves, the lower merchants, some of the younger nobles who saw opportunity and change. Others sat in stony silence. The old guard, the traditionalists, those who saw their power eroding like sand. Change was never easy, but it was happening. In the front row of the common section, a small figure stood. Blue skin, white mourning ribbons in her hair. Princess Kira's younger sister. In her hands she held a wooden bird. New, perfectly carved. A gift from Caleb, delivered 3 weeks ago through intermediaries. She clutched it to her chest, not playing with it, protecting it. Around her the crowd was changing, slowly, painfully, but changing. An old slave, the one who'd operated the gate, sat beside a merchant. They weren't speaking, but they weren't separated by barriers either. Young warriors from different houses sat mixed together, arguing about technique instead of lineage. In the noble sections, some of the younger generation leaned forward, eyes bright, seeing possibility where their parents saw chaos. The arbiter continued. The house of iron blood stands renewed. Let all who witness remember, strength is not born, it is chosen. Kira turned to Caleb. Her hand found his. Squeezed. He squeezed back. In the beast pens, the red hide roared its approval to the storming sky. Other beasts answered. A chorus of challenge and celebration. Kira looked out at the crowd, at the little girl with the wooden bird, at the slaves without chains, at the nobles scrambling to understand. It didn't start in a palace. It didn't start with laws. It started the day he caught a falling toy. The arbiter concluded, witnessed and sealed. The crowd rose, not all of them, not most, but enough. The little girl lifted the wooden bird high. In her eyes reflected 2 figures standing together, human and Karali, equal. The camera holds on her face. Wonder, hope, recognition. Slow pullback. The arena, the crowd, the sky. The slave wore the champion's armor, and the world kneeled, not in submission, in recognition, in the understanding that everything built on chains was shifting, that something new, terrifying and beautiful and inevitable, was rising from the ruins. And in the center, a human and a Corelli stood together, hands clasped, armor shining in the rain. Proof that the impossible was just the first step toward the necessary. Hours later, when the crowd had dispersed and the vendors packed their stalls, when the nobles returned to their estates and the slaves to their quarters, the arena stood empty. Rain still fell, steady, quiet. On the stone floor near the broken pedestal lay a small wooden bird. The wind pushed it, rolled it, tumbled it across the slick clay until it came to rest against something solid. The champion's armor, discarded, waiting to be cleaned and stored. The bird settled on the breastplate's edge, light as breath, fragile as hope, and there it stayed, perched on steel forged for war, a symbol of freedom resting on the instrument of change.